Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ask Us Anything legal workshop for SMEs and startups. As a lawyer and an entrepreneur, it never ceases to amaze me how significant the impact of a seemingly simple, well-informed decision has on a business. When you consider the fact that 90% of all startups fail and only 15% of businesses make it to the fifth year, you begin to understand and appreciate the importance of making the right decisions. And the first step to making the right decision is asking the right questions. There's a saying that he who asks questions doesn't get lost. It's for this reason that ULAW, in collaboration with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, have put together this legal workshop so that you can ask us anything. The workshop will be moderated by Adiola Ajayi. But before we come to Adiola and before she runs with the workshop, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rotimi Oyelere. Rotimi is from the Lagos State Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he will be representing the LCCI on this workshop. So, Rotimi.
Thank you, Tega, for the introduction and the opening. Good afternoon, everyone in this call. It's a pleasure for us to be collaborating with ULAW for this session and this question and answer session to help business make informed decision. Permit me to stand on the established introduction and protocol. We duly recognize all important personalities in this call. Also, we recognize that we have members of the media here with us. You're duly recognized, and we also acknowledge everyone. Thank you for finding time to join us. My job here is to talk about the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry and our focus, our forte, and what we offer. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as you know, was established in 1888. It is the foremost and largest private sector group in Nigeria. The chamber has over 2,400 corporate members. It accounts for an estimated 60% of industrial output, 65% of general commerce, and 75% of financial services in the country. Invariably, what this implies is the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is a captive market for every businesses, because everyone you actually need to do business with, you can find in the chamber. The chamber primary focus is to promote and protect trade and industry, and to represent and express the opinion of the business community on matters affecting trade and industry here in Lagos and in Nigeria generally. It is the central organization for collecting, distributing, and disseminating information on a business nature, especially regulations, tariff, opportunities for trade, and other matters affecting home and overseas markets. Let me talk about the structure. In pursuit of its objective, the chamber is committed to no political creed. The chamber is not affiliated to any political interest or group in the country and beyond. So the Council of the Chamber is the highest policy-making body and usually meet bi-monthly on the first Wednesday to deliberate on issues of importance to the chamber, issue of importance to the business sector, and generally to the Nigeria economy. Members who are not individual members of the council are welcome to attend as observers. Some of the services will the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry provide to the business community. The first is, on my list, is a letter of introductions, which are issued to members on their representatives traveling abroad. The Chamber also facilitates networking with institutions abroad and confirm references of local members. The Chamber also provides numerous directories, trade journals, and periodicals from virtually every country in the world who may have access to such publication in the Chamber Library and Business Information Center. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is also very reputable and highly certified to provide the certificate of origin. This is for the businesses that are into international trade, import and export. The Chamber provide the certificate of origin to validate also their transactions. And this document from the Chamber is acceptable all over the world. Members receives business journal, economy, and business, and the Nigeria Business Directory annually, free of charge from the Chamber. But what qualifies a member is being up to date with the annual subscription. The Chamber's publications are among the leading works of references used by overseas businesses in connection with trade and investment opportunities in Nigeria. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is recognized as the official body through which local opinion on commercial and industrial matters can be presented directly to the government or other authorities, both national and locally. The Chamber is frequently consulted by the government in advance of the preparation of the new regulation affecting the business community. This is our advocacy focus, and the Chamber has influenced so many policies and intervention that has benefited the business community. The flagship event of the Chamber is the Lagos International Trade Fair. It is a 10-day annual event, which is adjudged as the largest trade exhibition event in Africa. It begins on the first Friday in November, where they planned this year. Trade fair will Lagos International Trade Fair will start on the 6th of November. We can save the date, 6th of November, to close on the 15th of November. The event started in 1981, and it has grown by leaps and bounds till date. It has been a platform for SMEs in particular. The Lagos International Trade Fair used to be organized by the federal government, but the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry was given that right to start staging the event in the 80s, as I mentioned earlier. So it is a platform where small businesses can showcase their innovation in product and services to the whole world. Ladies and gentlemen, because of short of time, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry has become a household name, not only in Lagos, but in Nigeria. And as SME, or irrespective of the business category, you are encouraged to be part of this family. You must understand, and you need to know that the Lagos Chamber of Commerce is a membership-based organization, which means you need to register to be a member of the chamber. You can find details on how to register for the membership of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry on our website, lagoschamberofcommerce.com. So for those who are interested to be part of the chamber family, please visit the website for details on how to be the member of the chamber so that you can benefit from all this opportunity. At this junction, I would like to thank ULaw for putting up this auspicious event, which we are very convinced is going to benefit in no means measure the business that have participated. And I want to encourage all participants to engage, to interact with the speakers and ask questions. On this note, I would like to end my speech. We thank you for the collaboration, and we look forward to a very fruitful engagement this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Rotimi. So I will, without further ado, I will pass on the floor to Adiola to take us through ULaw as we know it and moderate the Q&A session. Adiola.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adiola Ajayi. I'm the manager of ULaw, and I want to just welcome you again to our Ask Us Anything legal workshop. So today, we started off with some opening remarks from Tega Agbosa, who is also working with ULaw, and Mr. Rotimi Oyelere. And now I want to take you through a presentation on ULaw. After which we will begin the Ask Us Anything Q&A and on the topics that you see there on the screen. But before we start, just so everyone knows how we will be proceeding, please go ahead to look at the bottom of your screen. So there is a Q&A, there should be a Q&A button there. And you can use that button to ask us questions at any time. And then I will be going through to look through and find the different questions. And then please also go ahead to interact with each other using the chat function as well. We love to hear from you, and the panelists can also read the chat. So we love to hear from you, hear your opinions as we proceed. Thank you. So first, a little bit about ULaw. Just please give me a moment to, okay, so a little bit about ULaw. ULaw is a legal services provider born out of the firm of Udo and Bello Osage that has been created to specifically and exclusively cater to the SME community and startups in Nigeria. We have streamlined legal assistance and legal support to the point where we can easily and quickly provide top-tier legal expertise to the SME community at pocket-friendly prices. Obviously, Udo and Bello Osage has been in the legal space for several decades. And as a result, we have used the experience of Udo and Bello Osage to create an arm that would be specifically catering to the SME community, using all the experience that we've gotten from over the years. So the services that we provide range from business advisory to company secretarial to incorporations to trademarks, quite literally anything that any need that an SME may have, ULaw will be able to provide this. And our lawyers are born from the stock of Udodo and Bello Osage, and will definitely be able to assist with all the needs of an SME and provide the assistance that is required. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panel. We have Busayo Odeku, who will be assisting us with business establishment today. We have Femi Adeluola, who will be providing information on intellectual property. We have Bond Ekiopara, who will be providing answers on contract, Anuoluapo Odunaike, who will be helping with vesting, Damilola Adedoyin, who will be helping with investing, and last but not least, Okoko, who will be answering questions on employment. So at this juncture, I would like our panelists to please introduce themselves. So we can start with Busayo.
Thank you, Adiola. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Busayo Odeku. Today, I'm going to be taking questions around the legal considerations for business establishment in Nigeria. Determining and registering the right business structure is very important for the sustainability of a business. So if you have any questions around what type of structure to set up, the necessary documentation, the necessary information, I'll be happy to put you through. It could also be a non-profit entity. Nigerian company law actually makes provisions for profit and non-profit oriented organizations. So if you want to set up an NGO, for instance, you can ask questions around, the requirements, and I'll be happy to put you through. And then if you already have a registered entity and you want to make clarifications around your secretarial and governance needs, I'm also here to take those questions. So thank you, and I look forward to receiving your questions.
Thank you so much, Busayo. So can we now have Please go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're all well and keeping safe. And thank you once again for joining us. I am Okoko. I'm with you, Laura, as well. And today I'll be answering and addressing any questions or concerns you have in respect of employment law and legal matters to consider as an employer or when you're looking to employ someone. Now, as a startup or an SME, you probably already have employees or might be looking to recruit employees, or alternatively have a sort of informally contracted services of, say, a tailor, if you're a fashion designer, or more broadly, if you're a business owner who delivers products regularly, a dispatch rider, and you're perhaps wondering or might not be aware of what your legal obligations are as an employer, or if you even actually need to employ these people that work with and for you. So I'm here and very happy to answer any questions or concerns that you have, and these can range from what your standard employment contract should look like, to what your legal mandatory obligations are as an employer, which there are quite a number of, and in our experience, a significant number of employers are not aware of this. So I look forward to receiving your questions and answering them.
Thank you, So Femi Adeluola, do you want to go ahead?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Femi Adeluola, and I work with ULAW. Today, I'll be answering your questions related to intellectual property. So from my experience, businesses, both big and small, always neglect intellectual property. They forget to protect the very idea, the processes, the products and services that they offer. Without your products and services, then there's no business. So it's really worrying when businesses don't take the extra step to protect their intellectual property. So today I'm going to answer questions on trademark, patents, copyright, designs. And just to give you an idea of how important intellectual property is, according to Forbes, Google's trademark is worth $44.3 billion US. So just the trademark alone, not the copyright, not the designs, not the trade secrets, just the trademark alone. So you can imagine how much that is. So it's an area of law that I implore SMEs to really look at from the beginning, from the conception of the idea to when the business is fully running. So I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Femi. Okay, so moving on next to Dami Adedoyin.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Dami Lola Adedoyin, and I work with ULAW. First of all, I'd just like to thank you all for coming in to this very, very important workshop. And I'm just going, basically, I'll be addressing any questions you have on investing, and particularly how investing works in SMEs and startups. To be very frank, I always tell my colleagues that I'm sure this is the topic that everyone on this, workshop or webinar is actually here to talk about or to listen to, because we all know that investment or finance is basically the benchmark of any business. And, you know, it's actually the primary thing to think about before starting a business. So I think the last report, the report released by McKinsey, said that about $2 billion was invested in Lagos startups in 2018. So which definitely shows, you know, the level of finance actually coming in, and it also shows the level of growth and opportunity that's also in the industry. So before you establish a company, before you employ people, before you protect your IP rights, we all know that the investment of the finances needs to be sorted out first. And I'm just here to provide any insights that you may have on when or what to do when you look forward to investing. So glad to be here and look forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Dami. Okay, so Bond, please take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bond Ekiopara, and I am a lawyer with ULaw. You would agree with me that as an SME or a startup in business, you'll be having dealings with quite a number of individuals, some of which include your suppliers, your distributors, your customers or clients, as the case may be. Now, these dealings are to be regulated by, or they're usually regulated by, what we know as contracts, which may be oral or written. Now, there is the need to ensure that regardless of the type of contract, you're adequately protected, your business is adequately protected in the course of your relationship with these individuals. So I'll be addressing any concern or any questions that you may have in connection with these sort of contracts, as well as your relationship with these individuals, i.e. Suppliers, distributors, or your customers.
Thank you, Bond. So we have Anu Luakbo. Please go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Anu Odunaike, and I'm here to answer or address any questions or concerns that you may have about vesting. So when starting a business, there are a lot of things that you have to consider, as my other panelists have mentioned, but one of the most critical things to consider is your relationship with your co-founders and your employees. And vesting is a good way to ensure that ownership of shares is clearly stated out, and everything that you need to know about who owns what and what equity goes to which founder at a particular point in time is clearly stated out to avoid any disruption to the business in the instance where founders risk happens when somebody wakes up and says, I'm no longer interested in doing this business, I want to move on to another thing. So your interest is protected. So I'm here to answer any questions as to how vesting works, what agreement needs to be in place in order for it to be done properly or legally, what types of vesting, what's the vesting schedule, and how all those things work. I'm happy to address or answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for joining us again, and I'm available for all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anu. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've met our panel, and we are just about ready to start the Q&A. I see we already have quite a few questions. Just to remind everyone to use the Q&A button to ask your questions to the panelists. But before we begin, we'd like to just start with a quick poll, which should be on everyone's screens right now. So please go ahead and answer. We're just going to give this 30 seconds. And the question is, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing SMEs in Nigeria? So please go ahead and vote, and then we'll discuss the answer to the vote in about 30 seconds. Thank you. Okay, so the answers are in, and if you'll allow me to say, the winner is erratic government policies. So we have 47% of our attendees today have said that erratic government policies are the biggest challenge facing SMEs. In second place, it's insufficient funds. And I think that is fantastic because obviously we have an expert here who's going to be discussing and answering questions on investments and raising capital. So that should be very, very useful. We also have an unstable economy and greedy investors also got votes from our attendees. So hopefully we should have questions on those things as well. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and start taking questions. So the first question that we have is for Busayo Odeku. It's on companies. And it says, I have a registered company. I have registered a company as a limited company in 2018. I haven't really worked much on the company and I didn't work on tax registration. What do I need to do? And what should I be worried about right now?
Okay, thank you for that question. Immediately after incorporation, actually, you ought to have visited your nearest tax office. And by the nearest tax office, I mean the tax office that is closest to your registered office address to do your tax registrations. And that means registering for your tax identification number and also registering for something called a tax clearance certificate and also to obtain a value-added tax registration as well. So what you just need to do right now is to actually go to the nearest tax office close to your registered office address to do these registrations. Although now, the Corporate Affairs Commission have collaborated with the FIRS to issue tax identification numbers immediately after, while you're incorporating a company. But because your company was registered as far back as 2018, you actually need to go to the nearest tax office to do those registrations. And then they would be the ones to determine what your tax liabilities are from 2018, depending on if your business was actually operational. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Busayo. That was a very concise answer, and I hope that that was very helpful to Mr. or Miss Adeshonoye Adiola. Our next question is for MM, and it says, during your introduction, you mentioned that employers have legal obligations that we might not be aware of. Can you briefly tell us about these obligations?
Thank you for this question. This is actually a very important and broad question that I'll try to answer as concisely and sufficiently as possible. So I'll stick to 5 key statutory obligations that employers are mandated to meet. And when I say statutory, I mean that there are laws that have been passed by government that clearly state out that as an employer, you have to do this, otherwise you will face penalties. So the first one are pension contributions. As an employer in the private sector, if you have 3 or more employees, you are required to make pension contributions on behalf of your employees to their respective pension fund administrators. So typically what would happen is your employees would have opened pension accounts with pension fund administrators, and the responsibility is on you as an employer to remit those pension fund contributions into their accounts. And there's a penalty for failure to do this. The second one is another payment requirement. I should mention at this point that all the 5 mandatory requirements I'll be talking about are all payment requirements. The second one is another payment requirement by the Industrial Training Fund. This fund is a government body that provides programs and consultancy services, vocational apprenticeship training schemes to Nigerians. And the goal is to sort of stimulate human performance and improve human productivity in the country. And the law requires that if you're an employer with 5 or more employees, or even if you don't have up to 5 or more employees, you have an annual turnover of 50 million or more Naira, you have to contribute 1% of your annual payroll every year. And there's a penalty for failure to do this. The third is another payment for the fund known as an employees compensation fund. This fund is created for payments to be made, and this payment will be to help compensate employees that have sort of sustained injuries or diseases in their workplace, or while performing their jobs, and as an employer, or regardless, there's no threshold for the number of employees you have to make a monthly contribution of at least 1% of your monthly payroll. The fourth one is the personal income tax. And this is regular income tax that employees have to pay, but as an employer, the responsibility is on you to make the payment on behalf of your employees to the relevant tax authorities. So if it's in Lagos, the tax authority you'll be making the payment to is the Lagos Inland Revenue Service. And the fifth and final one I'll be mentioning is a payment to the National Housing Fund. This fund is essentially to provide money to Nigerians that want to buy houses, that need loans to buy houses or build their houses, or also to provide affordable houses for Nigerians. And if you have employees earning at least 3,000 Naira, you have to make a payment of 2.5% of all of their monthly salaries to the Federal Mortgage Bank every month. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that answer, Emma. Okay, so our next question is for Femi Adeluola. It's related to intellectual property. And the question is, for a company that wants to be the sole distributor of a foreign product in Nigeria, how can we protect our interests, and can we get a trademark on the product?
So to be the sole distributor of a foreign product in Nigeria, you will need to enter into an agreement with the foreign company. Now, that agreement could state that you'll be the exclusive distributor of the product in Nigeria, or it could be a non-exclusive distribution agreement. So ideally, you want an exclusive distributor agreement, so you'll be the sole company in Nigeria distributing that product. Now, when it comes to intellectual property, from my experience anyway, the foreign company usually would like to register the trademark in their own name. They register in their name, and then they give you a license to use their trademark in Nigeria. Or in very rare cases, the foreign company might say, okay, register the trademark in your name, and then when you're done, you use a deed of assignment to transfer the trademark back to them. So I think what you need to do is enter into an agreement with them to be the exclusive distributor of the product. When it comes to the intellectual property part of it, if they decide they want to register it and be the owner of the trademark, that's fine. They should grant you an exclusive license, so you're the only one allowed to use that trademark in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Femi, for that answer. So the next question is for Anu, and it's to do with vesting. So it says, I am an employee in a tech startup and I want to terminate my employment next month, but the vesting schedule I signed says that I have 2 more years before I can be fully vested. What happens to my vested shares if I leave now?
Okay, thank you, Adiola, for that question. Everything depends on your vesting agreement. So in your vesting agreement, there's already stated that your vesting schedule would end at the end of 4 years, and you're about to leave in the middle of that vesting schedule. So that what that means is that you are not fully vested. You don't have ownership of all the shares that you're supposed to get at the end of that period. What happens is that you end up leaving with just the shares that has already been invested in you at that particular point in time. So let's have a scenario. You're supposed to get 4% equity in the company after a period of 4 years, and you're leaving in the 3rd year. What you get is 3% equity, and the remaining equity will either revert back to the company, or if the vesting agreement states that the company has the option to buy it back, then that's what's going to happen. So you only get to leave with the amount of shares that has already been invested in you, and then the rest would still remain property of the company. That's the way it typically works, and everything is governed by the agreement between you and the company.
Thank you so much, Anu. Okay, so we have a question, I think it's for Dami, and it's in relation to grants. So it says that I'm working on the limited liability company, and I'm expecting some grants. What can I factor into my budget to get all legal structures in the company moving forward?
Hello, everyone. Okay, thank you very much for that question, Adela. So I think I'm not exactly sure on what you mean by legal structures. From my understanding, I think you're probably referring to setting up the company. But at the same time, you said you're working on. Okay, I'll just use the assumption that you haven't set up the company, right? And you're just starting from scratch. Well, in this particular instance, you're Mrs. or Miss Adeola, Mrs. Adeshunloye Adeola, you're particularly lucky in this instance because, for a grant, you're pretty much getting, should I say, donation? Let me just put it quote unquote, you're getting a donation because, you are getting, I believe you're getting funds from some particular organization, and they don't, in most situations, these organizations don't have any financial claim on your business, and they are not expecting anything in return. So it's most likely a situation where they see a viable opportunity in your business and decide to support you. So with respect to the sort of things you should factor in your budget, I'll pretty much just say is your typical incorporation cost. I'm sure Busayo will probably have a bit more a bit more information on that, but it's your typical incorporation cost. So by the time you decide on the company you want, what's your share capital going to be, obviously that would also determine how much you pay in terms of the cost. So I'll probably just say that aside from your incorporation cost, and I believe your other operational costs that you would use in running the business, as well as your capital expenditure, which is the initial funds that you use in setting up the business, those are pretty much what you're going to have to factor in. But apart from that, I don't see any other thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dami. So the next question I think is for again, and it says, as a startup seeking to hire employees for the first time, please, what should I be concerned about?
Hello again, everyone. So thank you for that question, Adela. I will say that the most important thing that you should be concerned about, the most foundational thing, is having a standard template employment contract with the adequate clauses addressing key contractual matters. From a legal perspective, I'll say is the most important thing that you should be concerned about. And some of these matters, include the very basic details such as the name of the employee, address, the title of the job, the nature of the role of the employee, where the employee is expected to work, be it your office or work from home, or it could also be both, payment terms, working hours, leave, if the employment contract, if the employment with the employee is meant to be for a fixed period, that should also be set out specifically in the contract. But as an employer, alongside all these very basic and also very important clauses, in order to protect your interests, there are a number of other key clauses that should be included, and I will just mention 3 important ones. The first one is a clause on confidentiality. This is very important because it will help protect your information, innovative ideas, business secrets, trade secrets, the effective processes that make your business great, your unique products, so much that your employees, by virtue of working with you, have become privy to. With this confidentiality clause, you'll be able to protect yourself because you'll be preventing the employees from revealing sensitive information. The second one I'll say is a clause on probationary period. So probation is essentially a trial period for a new employee, and in practice, it will typically last from any time between 3 months to a year. And the importance of this clause for you as an employer is that you can assess whether your new employee is good and fit for that position. And at the end of the probation period, you're at liberty to decide whether to confirm the employee as a permanent employee or let the employee go. And so this clause protects you from fully committing to an engagement with an employee that perhaps might underperform. And the final one I'll mention is a restraint of trade or a non-competition clause, commonly known as a non-compete clause. This clause is also to prevent your employees from perhaps becoming your competitor or joining a competitor during your employment and after your employment. But I think it's important to mention here that I have said that it can prevent your employees from joining your competition after their employment, but this cannot be, the non-compete clause cannot last forever. So it should have a reasonable duration of between 6 months to 2 years. That's what we see in practice. And so what this does is that it protects you as an employer from a situation where you have an employee leaving immediately and joining a competitor or becoming a competitor and, doing exactly what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, I think Dami Adedoyin had something else that he wanted to add.
Yes, thanks, Adiola. So just to add a bit to what I was saying initially to Ms. Adiola's question. So the thing about grants generally is that apart from the fact that, they are free in the sense, because, they're not expected to be paid back, or it comes from people who, in most situations, an organization who sees that, yes, you have something viable or something marketable to introduce into the economy or into the system. But in most situations, it actually ties to a purpose. So, for example, now, I'll probably say if you're getting a grant from like a WWF, I can see Mr. Adeshinoye Adeola. Sorry about that. Sorry, you're a he. So, Mr. Adeola, if you're getting a fund from, let's say, a grant from, let's say, let me just think off the top of my head now. Let me say a Ford Foundation. We know Ford Foundation, generally they are into, they're probably into things of, should I say, sustainability. So, meeting the SDGs, the UN SDGs. So it is likely that the terms of you receiving that grant is going to be tied into you fulfilling a particular SDG or working towards a particular SDG. So what I'll just particularly say is that whatever company or whatever organization you're getting this grant for, please make sure that you're very thorough in making sure that, it's clear whether it's tied to a purpose or not. And so you need to be careful to see whether there are any restrictions that you may have on using that particular grant. And, apart from that, that's just the little I was going to say. So just be very thorough and very careful in looking at what the grant is tied to. Thank you, Adela.
Thank you, Dami. So I think next we have a couple of questions for Busayo. The first being, how can someone retrieve a lost CAC document?
Okay, thank you for that question. Before I answer that question, I actually wanted to add, for the benefit of the participant that asked about tax registrations, that the tax clearance certificate can also be processed electronically. So typically as incorporation, FIRS would have sent an email to you, and then you can use the details in that email to actually access the website and get your TCC. So you might want to check your emails, but because the company was incorporated in 2018, I'm not sure that the online platform was on at the time. You can just visit the FIRS website. FIRS is the Federal Inland Revenue Service. So you can just visit their website to check for how you can process the TCC, and we can also help you through and put you through that process. Regarding applying for a lost CAC document, it's a very straightforward process. You just need to pay the necessary statutory fees for obtaining a certified true copy of the original. I think depending on the document, I think if it's the certificate of incorporation, I think it's about 10,000 naira. So you pay the statutory fees, and then you also need an affidavit deposed by one of the directors of the company stating why you are applying for the documents. So the affidavit will basically speak to how you incorporated the company on so date, and then you obtained all the documents, but you have now lost the document and you need a new one. So it's that simple.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question for Busayo is, it says that in the company that I've registered, I have a partner that I allocated shares to, but that person has left and I would like to retrieve them. What is the best way of going about that? Okay,
thank you for that question. So you simply need to, so if the person has left, first of all, we need to locate the person, because they need to transfer their shares either to the company, or they transfer it to you. Now, the thing is, under Nigerian company law, before the recently passed companies law, you needed to have at least 2 shareholders in every Nigerian company. So if both of you are the only shareholders in the company, then you need to find a new shareholder that the shares will be transferred to. But I guess, you also need to now determine, because there's a provision for single member companies under the recently passed companies law, you might need to determine whether you want to take advantage of this new development. So if you decide that you want to be a single member company, then the shares could then be transferred to you. However, I have to mention that even though the law has been passed, the platform for the new provisions under the new CAMA has not been set up by the CAC. So in terms of the modalities, for now, it's unclear until CAC, rolls out the platform and the regulations pursuant to the new law. So, but if you, right now with your current structure, you just need to find a new shareholder that the shares can be transferred to. So you need to find the partner that left, and then pass the necessary board resolution noting that that the shares have been transferred. And then you also need to execute a share transfer form between your partner and whoever the new shareholder would be. So the partner that left would need to transfer his shares to the new shareholder. So essentially, in a nutshell, you need a share transfer instrument depending on whether you want to be a single member or you want to maintain your current structure. You need a share transfer form, and you need a resolution of the board noting the transfer of the shares from your partner to the company or to the new shareholder. So whichever way you want to go around it, but you need to determine what you want your structure to be going forward, whether you want to take advantage of this provision for single member companies. But if you have multiple another issue is that the owner of the shares is the one that will determine who he wants to transfer the shares to. Remember that the shares belong to him, right? So he actually needs to determine whether or not he wants to give up his shares in the company. He can leave, but he can still have his stake. It does not affect his stake in the company. So I don't know, maybe you want to give context as to what you mean by he left. He can leave and still maintain his stake in the company.
Thank you, Busayo. Okay, so I think the next question is for Bond Ekebara. It says that I am an Instagram and Facebook vendor of shoes and accessories, but a lot of the time I get into arguments with my customers on their expectation of my service to them. And this has caused some trouble over the years. What can I do to protect myself and my business when customers expect the whole world in relation to my services?
God bless whoever is that sent that question. It's a very sensational one. So in response to that, if I were to just say that again as I understand it, so I understand the question to be that you sell certain products on Instagram, and then you sometimes get into arguments with your customers as to what they expect of you in terms of your services to them. And so you are looking for a way in which you can protect yourself and your business when it comes to the service that you provide. So I know that the first thing that you would want to think of is to enter into a contract with them, a written contract, as what ordinarily you would have entered into with them would have been an oral contract. But the problem with an oral contract is that it gives room for a whole lot of implied terms that the law would put into that contract, whether or not you have agreed to it. Now, one thing you could do on Instagram, for example, is to ensure that you have what we call terms and conditions, or simply put T&Cs. Now, what that does is it ensures that certain things are put in black and white, in which case you will be referring your customers to your bio page, which would have the link to the terms and conditions on Instagram. And so the terms and conditions will spell out exactly certain things that you want to use to protect yourself. For example, in the case of where the customer is not satisfied with your product and is seeking a refund, the terms and conditions could spell out the process or the conditions upon which a refund will be given. The terms and conditions can also spell out a process in which the repayment will be made to the client, or a process in which a client can make some sort of complaints to you and all that. So it's just it's a means in which you can ensure that you protect yourself, even though you're not entering into a written agreement that you will sign with the client. But then the client in question would already know that by coming to you or by engaging you to provide this particular service or give this particular product, then the client agrees to that terms and condition. And one thing I would always say is, to get a good terms and condition, you would always need a good lawyer to do it. You get a lawyer for all these kind of things to be able to understand your who understands your business and is able to structure the terms and conditions to be able to protect your business and protect you as well as a business owner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bond. So the next question is for It says, good afternoon. Please, I would like to know my obligations to my employees in respect to minimum wage. It says that some of us are not able to pay the current minimum wage. And what are our obligations to our employees in this respect? Can we still call this a salary? How do we go about this? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So the rule is that if you have 25 employees or more, you are required to pay the national minimum wage. So to the extent that you have over 25 employees or more, there's really no way around it. You will have to pay the national minimum wage. But if you have less than 25 employees, then you can perhaps get away with paying less than that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, So the next question is for Busayo, and it says, I would like to know if NGOs pay tax, and if so, how does one go about this?
Okay, NGOs are generally exempted from paying taxes. However, depending on the structure that you operate, if, for instance, you have a registered company limited by guarantee, and you occasionally do business in order to generate income in order to generate income for your NGO, then that income generated is depending on how you intend to apply that income, it might be subject to companies' income tax, but generally NGOs are exempted from tax.
Okay, thank you so much, Busayo. So I think the next question is for Anu. It says, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm considering vesting options for my co-founders and employees. Is a vesting agreement important?
Okay. Thank you very much, Adiola, for that question. A vesting agreement is very, very important when considering offering vesting options to either co-founders or employees. The reason being that the agreement is put in place to state clearly who gets what at what particular point in time. So a vesting agreement would typically have a vesting schedule, which is like a table that says founder A gets 10% of these shares in year one, founder B gets same 10% in year one, year two, they get additional percentage of shares in year two, and so on and so forth, up until the end of that vesting period. So it clearly states how many shares will be allotted per year. It also states what happens if somebody decides to leave or stop working for the company before the person is fully vested. When I say fully vested, I mean the vesting period, which could be either 4 or 5 years, has come to an end. So a vesting agreement will provide for all of those things, and it will just protect everybody and let everybody know what it is they are entitled to when it comes to ownership of shares. A good example is, I don't know if anybody's watched the movie, The Social Experiment, which is basically about how Facebook came about. We have Mark Zuckerberg and a couple of his co-founders that decided to start up Facebook. If you had watched the movie, one of the co-founders had left at the inception of the company and then came back when Facebook was more popular, he had more money, he had traction, and then he came back and was demanding his ownership of the company because he was the co-founder. But because they had a vesting agreement in place that already stated that because he had left at a particular year, he was only entitled to a certain amount of shares, he was not able to come back and lay claim to a substantial amount of the shares in the company. So you're able to protect yourself. And also it is important because when investors are trying to come in and give you money for your company, they will typically want to know if there's a vesting agreement in place. The reason being is because investors are investing in the founders, and there's always the founders' risk that somebody can wake up and say, I'm no longer interested in doing this business because there's nothing tying down to the business and they can leave. So investors always want to be assured that all the founders are committed to growing the business and having their ownership of shares tied down to a schedule that only gives them full shares at the end of a couple of years is a good way to ensure that they stay in the company longer. And also for employees, it also encourages loyalty and just make sure everything is clearly stated out and specified. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anu. Okay, so I think we're coming to the end of the Q&A session, so we only have time for one more question. And that question is for Femi Adeluola. And it says, I'd like to know how to go about trademarking a nickname, which now seems to be my first name for future business interests. I coined the name when I was much younger, and I'd like it to be unique to me alone.
Okay, so obviously you didn't tell me what the name is exactly, so I can't determine right here, right now. But if the name is an invented word that is unique, it's not an English name, so you can't go and register a nickname that is the killer or the something that is just English words, you won't be able to register. But if it's a name that you've coined, I'm trying to think of an artist, a music artist whose name I can use now. Skibby, Fowls. Those are names that they have coined. They are not English names. They're not related to any product or service. Those are names that they've invented by themselves, and they will be registrable. But if it's a name that is just an English name, it will not be registrable. So if you can just let me know what the name is, then I can advise you further on whether it will be accepted for registration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Femi. So we've come to the end of the Q&A session. And I just want to thank our panel of you lawyers so much for their time and for their expertise that they've used to answer the questions of our attendees. So I'd like to spend the next minute or so talking about ULaw and the services that we offer. So ULaw is, as I mentioned before, an SME-focused legal services provider. And we provide services all the way from legal advisory to transaction advisory to company secretarial services to one-off templates and agreements. We have a wide range of services that we offer. And after this call, we'll be sending around some materials that would be helpful to the SMEs that have joined us today to know whether or not they might be interested in the services that we are providing. We also have a range of retainer services or retainer packages that we offer, both specialized and non-specialized retainer packages. So as you can see on the screen, we have about 5 specialized retainer packages, depending on the activities of the startup in question. So if your startup, for example, going through a product launch and is currently is thinking of launching a product in the next year, we have a retainer package that is specific to that, which will offer assistance with supply and distribution, marketing, NDAs, etc. If your startup is potentially considering investment in the early stages or maybe a joint venture, we also have retainer packages that could assist with those things as well. We also have an intellectual property protection retainer package, which will assist with trademark registration, reviewing IP agreements and the like. And then we also have a company secretarial package, which has actually been a bestseller of ours for SMEs who would like us to be their company secretary for the year and ensure that they have checked all their boxes in terms of compliance. In terms of startup packages, if you are a startup, but you have not necessarily incorporated, you just have an idea, or maybe you're just working off of Instagram and you'd like to legitimize, we have 3 different size packages that can help with starting up. All of these packages include an incorporation, trademark registration, and assistance with legal opinions. And depending on what you would like, the bigger the package, the more that comes within it. And we can also help with agreements, provide company secretarial services and legal advisory services as well. The last thing I'd like to touch on is that ULaw is relatively new, and we are hoping within the next month to launch our website. And our website is intended to be a one-stop shop for SMEs, and that will provide streamlined and quick and easy agreements and other kinds of legal advice, quite literally just downloadable off of the website. All the sectors that are listed on the screen right now will be covered on the website, and we'll also include training sessions. We have a blog on there that will be consistently updated with up-to-date legal information and legal updates. We also will have workspace rental. We understand that SMEs sometimes have an issue with getting actual office space. So we're going to be having workspace rentals and co-working spaces that will make it really easy for our SMEs to come and work for the day or for a few hours. We also have a compliance calculator that's going to be coming up, which would quite literally skip the average SME hours of due diligence and compliance checks. Simply by entering in your information into our compliance calculator, you'll be able to find out the legal status of your SME. And then also we'll just have other information on our events, any pitch events that are coming up as well, and much more. So we've come to the end of our workshop. So I'm putting up a survey so that everyone could please let us know what they thought of the seminar. We'd be so grateful for your feedback. And also, please don't forget to follow us on social media. If you like this workshop, we will definitely be having many more of these. So if you just follow us, you'll then be updated immediately to know when our next one will be. So yes, so please just hold on a little bit, and then we would have our survey coming up shortly. So I've just been told that the survey will actually be coming up after the webinar. It will be inside a follow-up email to our workshop. So I think this is it. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for attending. And we hope to hear from you soon. If you'd like to hear from us, obviously, please go ahead, follow us on Instagram or Twitter. Let us know what you thought. And we'll obviously be right there to reach out to you as well. And look out for follow-up emails to this workshop with important materials from this workshop and information on how to get in touch with us. Thank you so much for joining.